once I got to know the editors there and work full-time at Marvel, I kind of spread to working for DC, Valiant, Image, Dark Horse, IDW, and most recently Dynamite Entertainment, based down in South Jersey. And do quite a bit of private commission work on the side too, besides all that. And so that's my story.
I'm Mark McKenna. Everything that Chris said is what I've done too.
I'm Scott Hanna. I've spent most of my career working for Marvel and DC, who I'm still currently working for, and I've worked on pretty much every major character for both companies, which several of us can probably say that.
Yes, my name is Bob Wycheck, and I've been in this industry since this. I was just talking to this gentleman next to me. I've been here since the summer of '74, working backgrounds and working in, I would say, just about every major character for Marvel and DC and some of the independents, except for Ant-Man. Never had anything to do with Ant-Man. Well, them's the breaks. You know, you can't just ink every character. Anyway. And I've worked with just about every talented penciler you can find, as far as Walter Simonson, who's here. And please go by and say hello. Am I speaking too loud?
And a big influence of mine.
There we go. But anyway, by the way, when we have a talk here, please interrupt and ask us as many questions as you like, because I like to bring it out to the audience and have you guys ask questions, which kind of gets the ball rolling a lot of times. So please do.
Hi, I'm Bob Almond. I'm probably the baby here. I didn't start till about '92 professionally. Most of my work's been for Marvel Comics, various other independent publishers. Probably most notably Warlock, Infinity Watch, and Black Panther. A lot of commission work. Unlike some of them, I didn't start with a studio or a mentor or anything like that. It was kind of a fall-on-your-face approach of just learning as you go along. Doing this for 25 years now this year, and I also do commission work as well. And I formed the Bull Awards in 2008 to promote the art form of inking and bring more recognition to the artists of that art form.
Alright, so before we begin, does anyone in our audience not quite understand what's involved in inking? And if so, would any of the panelists like to give some insight?
So you just want us to start off and just explain what inking is all about? Okay. Anybody want to start off here?
Yeah,
you should. Oh,
you're the veteran. You can.
See, I am the veteran. I'm not really a big. I'm not a talker. I was just saying to Bob, I'm more of a listener than I am a talker. So forgive me if I'm not as good at saying, describing things here. But anyway, what I found out about inking was when I was reading comic books. I would notice, for example, Jack Kirby was penciling just about every title at Marvel at the time. But basically what he was doing is Fantastic Four, Captain America, and the Mighty Thor. Now, as I was growing up, I'm noticing how these books, penciled by the same person, kind of look different. And you get that from who was inking Jack's work at the time. Joe Sinnott was inking the Fantastic Four, had a more slicker line, made everything look pretty. Still, Jack's work was still there. The power of Jack's work was always there, in fact. And you could tell the difference between that and the inking that Vince Colletta was doing on the Mighty Thor. A little not as refined as Joe's, but a lot of times he was bringing more of a grayness to his work. But later on, as I noticed as Vinny progressed, he was using bolder lines, and when Vinny used bolder lines with his kind of like rendering that he did, it looked fine. It looked really good. Vinny sometimes gets a bad rap about things because he really put out a lot of work and he met a lot of deadlines, held down in a lot of deadlines a lot of times. So, and then there was another gentleman named Frank Giacoia who was inking most of Jack's Captain America work, and he had more of a bolder line than Joe did, but it more looked like Jack's work. He pretty much gave us what Jack really looked like on the paper. So here I'm growing up and finding out what the different inkers look like on different pencils. Gil Kane had a lot of good inkers on his work. He had Craig Russell inking a job that looked like a storybook. It was the Wolf Boy story for Marvel Fanfare. Gave it a more storyboard look. It was really beautiful. Then there was a job that Gil Kane penciled on Conan many years ago, inked by Ralph Reese. It looked so refined, so much even better than what Barry Windsor Smith was doing at the time. Of course, Barry later on, what he was doing, he was just evolving himself at the time, but still. So you could actually tell the difference between who was inking who at the time. And you could see the styles, how they would differ from job to job. Does that pretty much explain it?
I'll take this over. So, inking is normally it's broken up into different parts. We have a writer who writes a script, a penciler who lays out the page, does all the initial drawing. The penciler, depending on who it is, they might do very tight, finished, complete pencils with every hair drawn, or my preference is usually to work with a looser penciler where they leave a lot of room for interpretation. They don't necessarily bother with line weights. Sometimes they don't even add the blacks or the textures. But the storytelling is done in the pencil stage. They lay out the panels, the pages. They do they arrange everything in the proper manner. Then it goes to the inker's stage where we have to turn it into finished printable image in black line, and it's our job to clean it up, fix things that are wrong. If there are continuity errors, we add textures frequently, we add blacks frequently, and what you see on the printed page is the inker's work. The penciler's work, in the old days, we would erase everything that was left after we're done inking. Nowadays, we frequently work from what are called blue lines of scans, digital scans of the artwork, and then we still delete the blue line when we're done with the black and white work. So what's printed is the black and white work, and then after we're done, it goes to a colorist who then digitally nowadays they color the artwork, but the original art pretty much stops at the black and white. The coloring is almost always digital. Most of us are still traditional inkers where we ink with quill pens and brushes and sometimes markers. I usually always use just straight quill and brush. Anything else?
Did that explain for you?
You have an editor pulling this all together, and you have the editor-in-chief who oversees it as well. But it's mostly the editor that assigns a lot of, I would say 9 times out of 10, I may be wrong, the way things may be going differently nowadays at Marvel in DC, but when we were working up there, I'm pretty sure you're still working there, they have the editor who assigns the writer, the penciler, and then the inker, and the colorist. So, and they have a team, and they'll be doing the same series for a good number of issues. Unless, of course, there's sometimes a fill-in issue, or it's because of deadlines. Even a lot of times, what they'll have, the pencil will have penciled the whole book, and because of time, they'll have like multiple inkers. They'll have like 5 different inkers inking up the work. So, yeah. So the editor pulls it all together. Yeah.
And I'll just throw this in there too. The editor is usually the guy that's on staff. The only other jobs are usually freelancers, and we can live all over the world, because now the digital age, it's become worldwide. You could have a penciler in Brazil, and an inker in New York, and you can have a colorist in Australia, and it all has to come together through the comic company though, and that's what the editor is.
Try with that, Chris?
I was lucky that job working on staff at Marvel. One of the big biggest breaks I ever had because I had actually multiple mentors there. First and foremost was my boss, John Romita, one of the most famous Spider-Man artists. And when I started working on staff at Marvel, it was after 4 years of art school and some serious training in illustration, painting, fine art. But in 12 months that I started work, I started off as an intern for John Romita before actually working in the bullpen. And at 12 months, I learned from him, mentor number 1, mentor number 2, Don Perlin, and mentor number 3, Joe Rubenstein. More in that 12 months at Marvel, I feel like, than I did in the whole 4 years of art school. Again, this is comic book specific stuff, but these guys are people that are working in the industry for 20 or 30 years, and also because older artists had an academic background, they also had art training before that, so they really knew all of their art chops. You know, besides penciling and inking, all of them are very good painters and artists in their own right. But those 3 people are the people that I always constantly name when people ask, you know, how I got my start and how I learned. Got most of the stuff that I learned out of comics from them in that order: John Romita, Don Perlin, and Joe Rubenstein.
I have a question for you, sir, since you said that John Romita was one of the mentors. He's one of my favorite artists. What was it like working with him?
Excuse me, there's the sound. Besides being a good mentor, John Romita is probably, if I had to sit there and give a top 5 of people that I love the most in the comic industry, I think he's probably number 1. As talented as he is, he's probably the nicest, most humble, and giving person that I ever met in comics. I've met a lot of, you know, selfish types, people that, you know, you kind of run into these kind of people in just about every business, you know, that kind of don't give you a break or would rather make you sweat through, you know, the foundation of the industry, I guess, before you finally climb up to something important. John was such a giving person that no matter who you were, he's pretty much gave more than anybody else about his knowledge about the industry. You know, he told me how I should be asking for raises and how to deal with the financial and business parts of the industry besides all the artistic stuff. So I can just say that he was like, you know, like a father figure, not just to me, to so many other people besides John Jr. Always knew John as sort of the father of Marvel, the same way that Virginia, his wife, was like the mother of Marvel. These people that worked on staff there. An incredible man. Really have absolutely no, you know, zero, you know, negative stuff to say about him. The same with Don Perlin. Again, the same type of person. A lot of these older guys that have been working in the industry since the 50s, you'll also find are some of the best, well-rounded and grounded people that you could ever meet too, as artists and as people. That's it. Incredible person.
So I graduated School of Visual Arts in 1982. I was going to try to pursue an illustration career. The illustration chair was a guy who introduced me to Sal Amendola, who was the new talent coordinator at DC Comics. And I went up to DC, met Sal, sat next to like a, you know, giant Superman statue, and said, "This is what I want to do the rest of my life." And when I used to live in Long Island, so I would take the train from Long Island to New York, go to DC, have classes every other weekend on Fridays, and then Marvel was about 20 blocks away. I'd go and show my samples from DC to Marvel, and then one day John Romita Sr. called me up and offered me a job at Marvel on staff. So I think it came a little before Chris when it comes to being working in the program. He used to call us Romita's Raiders because we were all underneath John. And like you said, he's the friendliest guy in the business. You want him to be like your father, you know, he's that kind of guy. And I worked on staff for a year and a half. In fact, I met my wife on staff at Marvel. She worked in accounting and knew how much money I didn't make, and she still married me. And then but Marvel wouldn't hire me to do books because they always saw me as a production guy. So when I showed my samples over to DC is when I got offered Dr. Fate by Karen Berger in 1986, early 87. And I worked on contract with DC for 4 years until Marvel called me back to do Doctor Strange. in 1991. And that was the beginning of 32 years.
I wasn't as lucky as these guys. I didn't have the full range mentorship and the Ramirez Raiders experience. I went to college at Pratt Institute in New York City, went through 4 years of college, got out, and had a lot of trouble finding work in general illustration. I wasn't really happy with it. Then one of my buddies from college said, "Oh, Scott, we know somebody who's working in comics, needs some help." So I did what a lot of inkers in the old days used to do, is I worked as a background inker for another artist for about 4 or 5 months, learned some of the specifics again about comic book work as opposed to illustration work, and then very quickly I got my first job penciling and inking comics, and I found out, wow, penciling and inking a book a month is really, really hard. And I was like, well, I could either like pencil 1 book a month, or I was actually a little bit faster as an inker, and I could ink 2 books a month. And I found out that, wait, inking 2 books a month actually pays better than penciling 1 book a month. So I became an inker. And I've always loved the quality of line. I've loved to me, pencil drawing is a sketch. No matter how tight you get it, it's not quite finished for me. So I really love that black and white line work, the textures we can add to it. There's something special about that stage. So I actually prefer, when I had the choice, I prefer the inking stage over the penciling stage. And then I started out at a small company, penciling and inking, called Eternity Comics. Worked for them for about a year, brought that work to Marvel in DC. DC gave me my first work, and I've been working ever since. But I never really had anybody show me how you're supposed to do it. It's just like, here's a job, do the job. And you learn on the job along the way. And one of the great things about being an inker is you learn from every penciler you work with. So every new artist that you get to team up with, you're learning good things and bad things. You're learning what not to do and the things to do that you can further and bring you along with your career. So
Super adaptive.
yeah, well, being an inker is like you're in school your whole career because you're always working with somebody else.
No, that's very true. I've always had that philosophy of learning from the pencil.